Imagine for a second that we could blend up every human on Earth into one giant, grotesque smoothie. As crazy and disturbing as that sounds, today we're going to break down the bizarre science behind this morbid thought experiment. What would happen if all 8 billion humans were mixed into one huge human soup? How much space would it take up? What would it consist of? And what would happen next? Let's dive into the world of extreme, hypothetical science. We're all made of the same stuff: cells, water, proteins, fat, and minerals. But what if, for whatever insane reason, we combined every single person on Earth into one massive slurry? Sounds like something out of a nightmare, but bear with me. There's some fascinating biology, physics, and chemistry behind this. So let's start by figuring out how much human material we're working with. The raw numbers. There are currently around 8 billion people on Earth. The average adult human weighs about 62 kilograms, or around 136 pounds. If we multiply that by the global population, we're dealing with 500 million tons of human mass. That's a mind-boggling number, and to put that in perspective, that's more than the weight of 1,400 Empire State Buildings combined. Humans are composed mostly of water. About 60% of our bodies are H2O. That means that most of this horrifying concoction would be water, but there'd also be a lot of other stuff in there: bones, muscle, fat, blood, organs, and cells. Let's break that down. What's in the blend? Each human body is made up of different components, and if we blended everyone together, here's what we'd end up with. Water. About 60% of our body weight is water, so the human smoothie would be mostly liquid. Protein. Around 15 to 20% of the mixture would be protein from our muscles, organs, and tissues. Fat. Human fat makes up about 15 to 25% of body weight depending on the individual. So, this slurry would have a lot of healthy fat materials floating around. Bones. Even though bones are dense, they would get crushed and ground up. Bones are mostly calcium and phosphorus, making up about 15% of the total body mass. Other materials. We'd also have trace amounts of materials like iron, potassium, sodium, and other smaller organic compounds like DNA, hormones, and vitamins. The end result would be a thick, soupy mass of liquid and semi-solid matter, like a gruesome organic paste. How much space would it take? Now that we know what's in the blend, how much space would it take up? If we were to blend all of humanity, the total volume would be around 500 million cubic meters. That's about the size of a cube, 800 meters on each side, or roughly 2/3 the size of Central Park in New York. If you're looking for something more relatable, this would fill approximately 200,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Imagine that, an entire city covered in thick human soup. You'd need a giant container, a human blender the size of a skyscraper just to hold it all. The mass would be horrifyingly dense and liquid, with tiny chunks of bone and organic matter suspended throughout. Breaking down the blend, the gross science of decomposition. If we left this mass to sit, decomposition would kick in fast. Human bodies naturally break down due to bacteria, enzymes, and fungi. When organic material like this starts to decompose, several things would happen. Number 1, bacterial activity. Our bodies are teeming with bacteria, particularly in the gut. These microbes would immediately begin to break down cells, releasing gases like methane and carbon dioxide. This process, called putrefaction, would cause the mixture to bubble and emit foul smells as the material rotted. Number 2, liquid separation. Over time, the water would separate from the denser components like bone, fat, and proteins. You'd end up with a layer of sludgy liquid on top with denser solids sinking to the bottom, much like how oil and water separate. Number 3, gas expansion. As bacteria decompose the organic matter, the entire mass would swell up as gases built up. This could lead to explosive releases of gas, causing massive bubbles to burst on the surface, releasing a stench so foul it could be smelled for miles. Number 4, temperature increase. Decomposition generates heat, so the giant human blend would likely become warmer over time. In fact, large masses of decomposing organic material can sometimes get hot enough to ignite, although in this case the water content would prevent a fire. What would happen to Earth? With all this human mass in one place, the environmental effects would be catastrophic. The decomposition process would release greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide, which contribute to climate change. If we dumped this human blend into the environment, it would create massive biohazards. The slurry would contaminate water sources, spread diseases, and create an overwhelming odor. The entire planet would likely be affected. Additionally, the sudden loss of 8 billion people would collapse every system on Earth, from global economies to food production. Without humans, there would be no one to maintain the infrastructure, and nature would eventually reclaim the planet. It's an apocalyptic scenario that would lead to the breakdown of society as we know it. How long would it take to decompose? In normal conditions, a human body decomposes fully within 10 to 15 years if buried. But in this mass scenario, decomposition would be faster. The sheer number of bacteria feeding on the organic matter combined with the moisture would accelerate the process. However, decomposition wouldn't be instantaneous. It would take years for the mass to fully break down. The liquid would evaporate or seep into the ground, while bones and other hard materials would take longer to degrade. The gases released during decomposition would contribute to air pollution and could cause local ecological disasters. The big picture: why this thought experiment matters. So, why even consider such a morbid and impossible scenario? Well, while blending all humans together is absurd, the thought experiment highlights some important aspects of biology, physics, and the environment. It underscores the scale of human existence on Earth and shows just how interconnected we are with the planet's natural systems. The idea of blending humans into one mass might seem ridiculous, but it forces us to confront our mortality and consider what happens to organic matter over time. Whether we're talking about a single human or billions, the cycle of life and death is constant. Our bodies decompose and return to the Earth, becoming part of the environment that future generations will inherit. This hypothetical scenario of blending every human on Earth into a single human smoothie might be bizarre and unsettling, but it gives us an interesting way to think about our physical makeup and our place in the world. From sheer mass of humanity to the incredible process of decomposition, this thought experiment is a weird but fascinating way to explore biology and science. Let me know in the comments, what would you do if you had to clean up this human smoothie? Would it change how you think about humanity on a global scale? Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more bizarre and thought-provoking science discussions. Stay curious, and I'll see you next time.